Welcome back to the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast, where we will explore the local arts, culture, and community in the Lehigh Valley. We'll be doing this through conversations with individual artists, administrators, and organizations. We'll discuss all types of mediums with the goal of enriching local arts culture.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast. I'm Ben, and this week, Elizabeth and I are interviewing Rachel Bell. Rachel Bell is a mixed media artist living and working in the Lehigh Valley. After graduating from Tyler School of Art at Temple University with a BFA in painting and drawing and a minor in art history, she immersed herself in the Lehigh Valley art scene. She began working as the front desk receptionist at the Banana Factory, and soon after that, she started interning at the Allentown Art Museum in the Exhibition and Collections Department. After putting in a year at the art museum, she then went on to work as a gallery assistant at the Bethlehem House Gallery. Over the course of 2018, she went back to Temple and became a certified floral designer. Furthermore, in 2019, she started working under a local florist in the Easton, PA flower shop, Bloomies. Her role as a floral designer influenced her contemporary painting style and brought her work into the 3D realm. In 2020, during the pandemic shutdown, she was able to expand her portfolio and create a new body of work, which was on display in the Bethlehem House Gallery's Holiday Show of 2020. The exhibit included many of Rachel's mixed media paintings and drawings, floral arrangements, installations, and prints. Currently, Rachel has elevated her role at the House Gallery to assistant director, continues to create fresh floral arrangements at Bloomies, which was rated 2021's Best Flower Shop of the Valley by LV Style magazine, and she also manages her art practice in Studio 248A at the Banana Factory. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Hi.
I know that we have visited you at First Friday, the Banana Factory, quite a few times.
Yep.
And you also work at the House Gallery.
I do.
I've really enjoyed looking at all of your floral arrangements in the rooms. You have one that you were posting about in Al Johnson's room from the last show. Yeah, that was the most
recent one,
which was super cool.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
I know, Elizabeth, you have been super excited to talk about flowers on the show for a while now.
I love flowers.
Me too.
I love floral arrangements, and I like to figure out like what your style is in the sense of why you choose the textures you choose, and really been intrigued by your style and how you come up with your ideas of your whole concept and how you take objects from the outside and put it together, which most people won't do. So I am very excited to talk about floral arrangements with somebody who has such an eye for something different that most people don't see.
Totally.
Awesome.
Yeah. So what got you started with flowers?
With flowers. So actually the whole floral idea for myself came from actually my paintings. So I started using the floral motif in a lot of my work. I'm definitely inspired by like organic elements, nature, stuff like that.
Sure. And
as just kind of like a side thing, I decided to go to flower school. I went back to Temple, which is where I got my BFA.
Yeah.
And I got my floral design certificate. So I don't know. I wanted to work with a more 3D thing.
Sure.
And work with flowers, so
sure.
That's really cool.
What does flower school consist of?
Yeah, a lot of stuff. Floral design, just the basic principles of design, which is all stuff I learned before, but you know, it's good for refreshers and actually just working with like plant material. So the floral design school I was going to was fresh flowers. So in my arrangements at the gallery, they're all silk flowers.
Yeah,
and the reason for that is that the shows last multiple months.
Yeah.
And floral arrangements, fresh floral arrangements don't last multiple months. They only last a week or two at best.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's why I decided to switch over to silk flowers for that aspect and, make something that will last forever, essentially, as long as you're taking care of it.
That's awesome.
Like not, being crazy with it. But so that's how that whole idea happened with the gallery. But so I went to flower school, was learning about like different flowers, how they work together, all of that. So and also weddings. They talk a lot about weddings and wedding design and stuff. So.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That's super cool.
I actually do work for a fresh flower florist.
You mentioned that before,
Bloomies flower shop in Easton.
Yeah.
I do fresh flowers for people as well.
Okay.
But through that business.
Yeah, not
I
your
would
own.
I would do it on my own if somebody asked, but it's honestly just easier for me to do it out of the shop because she has a business tax ID, so she gets everything wholesale. And I do not. And I'm working on getting into that whole aspect. Field, I'm just not there yet.
Yeah, that makes sense.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Every time we come into your studio, you have arrangements with dried flowers. You've used dried flowers in your work. And you're also always drying flowers in your studio.
Yeah.
Yes.
I really enjoy the color palette using dried flowers. And drying flowers is something that Elizabeth and I do a lot at home as well.
Awesome.
And
more so after he talked to you, actually.
Really?
Yes,
Yeah, that's great.
1,000%.
I'm glad.
You're part of his inspiration.
Yeah, I'm curious what your draw to working with dried flowers, specifically from a coloration perspective, is.
So dried materials are very intriguing to me. I don't know, I've always been attracted to the decay of plants, I guess. Plants, flowers. I like the shapes that they turn into. I like them when they're fresh as well, but they kind of take on a different form. And I don't know, just the discoloration.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's something that I've always noticed, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah. Not as bright of colors for sure, but definitely a color palette that I think is still very beautiful.
Totally.
Oh, absolutely.
What are some of your favorite themes to dive into in your work?
So definitely the florals. I mentioned organic things, the decay of like buildings,
Sure.
and like when you're walking along the sidewalk and you see a crack in the concrete and you see like plant life re-emerging through that.
Yeah.
I think that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And when I was in college, I went to Rome for a semester.
Yeah.
And first of all, Rome is a very beautiful city, as you guys know, but it's there's so many different types of buildings, like very, very old architecture paired with modern architecture. And even just like walking through the alleyways, you saw the walls of the buildings have so many different types of discoloration and colors, and the plant life kind of reclaiming territory onto it. And that was a huge inspiration to me in my work, my abstract work specifically, and like the colors I use and the forms that I represent and stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
So,
that's really neat.
yeah.
I was looking through your Instagram earlier, and there was a piece that you had done when you were in Rome that was hanging with a chair beside it. I think it was on a wall with a series of 3.
Yeah.
And I stared at the one by the chair for like 10 minutes straight. The way that you had those textures, like, I think perfectly encapsulate the surroundings of Rome there.
Wow,
and
thank you.
It was so cool to see. And hearing you talk about that now,
yeah.
it makes so much sense to think about the textures in that piece and the textures of the city of Rome. Yeah, that's super cool.
Thank you.
How would you say that travel has inspired your work?
Well, definitely that trip inspired my work a ton, because before I went to Rome, I was doing representational landscapes. So I completely changed my entire vision of art, I guess. I mean, I still paint representationally, but the abstracts, I hadn't done abstract before that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
Now, what pushed you in the direction to try that in the first place? I know.
I would say that walking around and seeing all of that. And also, there is a little flower stand on every corner in Rome.
Really?
Selling flowers.
Yeah.
And
that's
that
awesome.
was a huge inspiration to me. I was like, oh my gosh, the flowers. And I would go and buy bouquets just for myself because I just love flowers. And then I would dry them in my studio over there and then end up putting them in my artwork. And that's how that came to be as well.
Oh, that's so cool.
Oh, wow. That's really neat.
Being an art major, a lot of people think is like super easy. It's not. It's a lot of time, a lot of hours to do the stuff that you have to do your assignments. You don't have no time to make your own stuff, that's for sure. Like, you're always working for somebody else at that point, you know?
A grad student?
Yeah. Well, sometimes. But, yeah, it was great. It was very educational. I do make a joke, though, how in high school, being in art class, you're taught to draw, right? You're taught to draw representationally a lot of the time. I didn't do any abstract work back then. I was very much trying to master looking at something and drawing it perfectly or painting it perfectly.
Sure.
But when I got to college, and I think this is just specific to Tyler in general because they are a very contemporary school, they kind of untaught me how to draw.
Interesting.
So, like, drawing something representational was all well and fine, but they were like, but what else could it be? What could you do with, like, other than that? Kind of. And it wasn't frowned upon to just do what you're, like, just to do something specific to what you're looking at, but it was very much more encouraged to do something out of the box, something abstracted, something, I don't know. More gestural, like stuff like that was much more encouraged.
Yeah. Looking at it through your own lens and your own perspective versus what you think everybody sees.
Yeah, seeking a recognizable style. Yeah, that makes sense.
So you mentioned high school and art. So when did you get inspired to start doing art as a whole?
When I was a child. When I was like 2 or 3.
That's really early on.
Yeah. I always wanted to be an artist, and I never let that dream go. Ever.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. So what inspired you to want to be an artist at such a young age?
I think it was, I love to, color and draw on my own, but it was mostly like older people, like my mom, teachers, recognizing a certain talent in me, saying, oh, wow, that's really good. Wow, I didn't realize that you could do that. You know what I mean? And that was encouragement, you know, like, oh, I guess I am good at this. And like wanting to continue that and build on it. So
that's awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I've asked this to a few people that started really early. But what is the first piece that you remember being happy with creating? So, like, for myself, I knew I wanted to be in film and documentary filmmaking from, I want to say, like 4th grade on. And in 5th grade, I entered our science show by making a stop motion animation.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, this is breaking the rules of physics. I'm like, it's not. I'm just moving inanimate objects and then placing them one after the next. But it like blew all my friends' minds. And I made this short racetrack scene. And, you know, I look back on it now and there's a lot that could be done better. But at the time I was like, this is making movies. Like, this is the coolest thing in the world.
That's awesome.
And it was a very fond memory that I have looking back. But like working in that medium, like that was the first time I remember being happy with a final product.
Well, the first time where I really felt like, wow, like this is pretty cool, I guess. It was my art because it was something I made, but it was actually a copy of a Vincent van Gogh painting.
Oh, very cool.
So I did that when I was in 5th grade in art class, actually. That was like the assignment. And I liked what I was doing and I was having fun with it. But it wasn't until the teacher came up to me and said, oh, I'm putting this in an art show that's going to be exhibited at Lehigh University.
Wow. Oh, really cool.
And I was like, what? So that was pretty cool. It was my first art show.
Totally.
And that was a really cool experience for me. So
that's awesome.
Really cool.
What is your earliest art memory as a child?
Had to have been back when I was like 2 or 3 drawing.
Yeah.
There's actually a painting in my mom's house that's in her bedroom and it's framed, and it was my first painting called The World.
Aww.
And it's just, splotches of color and my handprints and, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's a memory. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Very cool. That's the beauty of something art related and physical. Everybody has something that they probably have made as a child, and they keep it around because it's still a memory, which I think is really neat. So did you always, in the Lehigh Valley then, if your artwork was submitted for Lehigh University, I'm going to assume when you were younger that you were from here?
Yeah, I grew up in Bethlehem.
Born and raised in this area. Very cool.
Yep.
Not everybody is when that comes on here, so I was curious.
Yeah, grew up in Bethlehem,
sure.
went to school here. I went to, obviously, Temple for college. I lived in Philly, and I was in Rome for that one semester. But other than that, I've been in Bethlehem.
Very cool.
That's super exciting.
Very cool.
How would you say that the Lehigh Valley has influenced your artistic endeavors?
Well, the Lehigh Valley has a lot of great opportunities. Like the banana factory was kind of a goal of mine upon moving back here after living in Philly. Well, I did work for Arts Quest for a couple years. I was the front desk receptionist at the Banana Factory.
Oh, nice.
And that was kind of me trying to get my foot in the door there. Like, I want to eventually would love to have a studio here. Yeah. Didn't really feel like my portfolio and everything wasn't ready for that yet. And I was just kind of, building that up and, wanted to meet the artists in the community. And that was a great way. And then, there's the Allentown Art Museum. I interned there for a year as well. And then just having those two jobs led me to the Bethlehem House Gallery and working there, which was even better because a lot more artists you're meeting. And
absolutely.
And then, and then eventually I got a studio at the Banana Factory, which was awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How have you been able to use the studio at the Banana Factory to your advantage?
Well, it's great to have a space to make work.
Totally.
Working at your house is difficult because just having to allot that space for that, all of that, and storage and everything, and it just can get hectic, living in the same area you're creating, I feel like is kind of stressful sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
And not to say that people can't do it, and I definitely did do it. I did it for a while before having the studio.
Yeah.
But it's just great, and being able to bring people into it and having a more public setting. Because it's kind of, I don't know, having people come to your house is one thing, but I mean, having, you know what I mean?
Totally.
It's just an easier place to have people visit.
Work.
And
For sure.
I mean, First Fridays every month are so very helpful for that, too.
Oh, for sure. So a lot more people can see my stuff.
Absolutely.
With that, and I can set up appointments with people, and people can come see stuff when I'm, during the week. And,
and they don't have to be people
That's awesome.
No. I think the whole point of the Banana Factory is so that it's a working space for artists.
Totally.
Having just the strictly gallery aspect it's good for them, I guess, but I think the whole space, the point of having artist studios, I think, is so people can see the artist's working environment and see them working and all of that. So that's just my opinion, but people can use their space however they want.
Sure.
True, fair.
But I wanted the space to make my artwork in.
How has working at the House Gallery helped you as an artist, both understanding the general art world from a commerce side as well as from an artistic perspective?
So at the gallery, I do a lot of stuff. I help with the installs, so hanging artwork, doing all of the, making the artist statements, making the tags for the walls.
Sure.
Arranging furniture, helping move stuff. It's a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
But then when we're not in install, I am working as a salesperson, selling the artwork that we have on the walls and, the other items in the gallery. It's two very different jobs.
Yes, they are.
When I had first started working at the gallery, I really had no idea what was in what my job was going to be. I just knew that it was going to be working with art. And I kind of assumed it would be more so the installation part, which was the experience I had working at the art museum. I was in the exhibitions and collections department for a while, helping install their shows. So that's what I thought I was mostly going to be doing. But it turns out, I don't want to say the majority of the job is being a salesperson, but it's just more time. Because the show's 4 times a year. And they run 2-3 months. So during that time it shows up, you're mostly acting as somebody with the knowledge about the artwork, talking to the customers and stuff like that. And then it's just that 2-3 week period in between shows that you're really making the show happen.
Sure.
It's changed the way I view my own artwork because now I am making artwork in the hopes that people will want to live with it in their home. And even just the House Gallery in general is set up like a house.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
The idea is take this artwork home with you. It will look great in your house as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of changed my perspective of, okay, maybe I should be making art that's not too crazy so people want to bring it home with them. Whereas I was making kind of the piece you referenced in Rome.
Yeah.
I don't think that was something very, I don't know, kind of I threw together on a whim and was like, isn't this cool? Let's talk about the colors, let's talk about the textures.
Sure.
But I couldn't imagine that somebody would, I don't know, it would have to be a very interesting type of environment for that piece, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting thinking about where art lives in a space. I think that piece would have hit completely different if the chair weren't there.
Right.
Or if the chair were white instead of the brown that it was.
Yeah.
Or if it were a Herman Miller Eames chair instead of the traditional wooden lounge chair that it was. Right. Yeah. And all of these different pieces go into the presentation of the work. I'm curious to hear about how learning about the sale of artwork and selling others' artwork, learning about them as an artist, how that has helped you learn how to better sell your artwork.
Well, I read a lot of artist statements, and I talk to the artists when they're in, and when they drop off the work, we talk about their work. So hearing them talk about their own work is helpful. Because then it gives me insight into how I'm supposed to talk about their artwork.
Sure.
And which in turn helps me think about my own artwork and how I should talk about it. You know? So it kind of all flows together.
Totally.
Like I said, I started working there almost 4 years ago, and I'm still a shy person, but I've definitely learned how to be more outgoing, more social just through working there and talking to the artists. And now I do feel like I am able to talk about my work a little bit better just from that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. That's huge.
I've seen screen printing, floral arrangements, some mixtures of collages with dried flowers, paints. You work with paints, you work with chalk and pastels and all of the above. So I was curious as to if there was one that you find is your favorite or if it's something that you think changes over time.
So I really don't like to limit myself. When I'm making something, I want to be able to access as many materials as I think is necessary. Yeah. So I am a mixed media artist, and I don't want to say this specific thing is my favorite. Yeah. But I find the only time where I don't think I'm looking for multiple materials would be when I'm oil painting. And that was when I was doing landscapes type of stuff. I think oil painting can stand on its own. And I think it's very beautiful. I think acrylic painting can too, but a lot of the time when I am using acrylic, I do tend to embellish with other materials. Yeah. So, I do both.
That's awesome.
So what draws you to want to use more mixed, using all the resources that you have available to you, collaborating with all those different materials?
It's just kind of like a feeling, I guess. When I'm working on something, I'll start out with one material, but then I'll think, oh, this other thing might look good here or might work better in this situation and help with what it's doing. You know what I mean? So that's just kind of how it goes. Yeah. A lot of the time I don't have an idea of what I'm doing when I first start. I just kind of all right, we're doing something today. Yeah. And then I do it, and then things evolve. And if I do have an idea, it usually changes. I'll have a vision of what I'm thinking about doing. And then as I'm working on that, I'm like, you know what? I'm doing something else as I'm doing it. You know what I mean? And it builds on that idea, but it's not that specific thing that I was originally thinking. It's all kind of, I don't know.
Flows together. Yeah. And just kind of, I don't want to say advances because that sounds bad. It progresses and just allows you to further your creativity with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also don't give up on a lot of things either. So if I am working on something and it's not going the way I want and I'm really aggravated with it or I just am not liking what I'm doing, I might put it away for a bit. I might not look at it for a while, but I will never just abandon something unless it physically breaks and I can't, there's nothing else I can do. There's nothing you can do. But I hardly ever abandon something, and I want to bring it to a place where I am happy to show people what it is. You know what I mean? I don't want to be ashamed of anything, so I'll work on something until I'm okay, this is good. Yeah. This is me. This is representing what I want.
Sure. That's awesome.
There was something a professor said when I was in college. He didn't say it to me, but he said it to a classmate who had done something that just the classmate wasn't into and the professor definitely wasn't into and was telling him about it and was saying, pretty much ripping him to shreds. But then looked at the next thing he did right after that and was well, it's a good thing you did that the first time because you wouldn't have done this if you hadn't done that. So it gets you to where you need to be.
Totally.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it.
So any type of failure, any type of thing, I always look at like, well, if that didn't happen, like I wouldn't have done this other thing. So
yeah, learn from your mistakes.
Yeah,
totally.
Or what you consider mistakes. It's not a mistake, but
Yeah, definitely. I know we were talking about your piece Orchestrating Beauty a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear about the influence that music has had on your creative process.
So that piece I made specifically for the summer show at the Bethlehem House Gallery.
Yeah.
And what's specific about the summer show is that it runs through Music Fest. And we always like to have the Music Fest poster artists exhibiting with us at that time. And music in general is like a huge part of, Bethlehem and that festival and everything. So I had this idea. I have this used cello case that actually was passed down through a couple artists. Khalil acquired the case from Lehigh, I believe. I think he found it in a dumpster. I'm not sure, actually.
That sounds like something to do.
Sounds like he found something. And you know what he did? He gave it to Ward and said, make something with this. And Ward was like, okay, I don't really know what I'm going to make with it. So he kind of kept it for a couple years and was like, he said he would have gotten to it eventually, but I had mentioned wanting to do an installation. My original idea was out of a suitcase that I have. I wanted to do something like, I don't know, kind of like large and like kind of the idea of it coming up and out of something was the whole point.
Totally.
And then I remember I mentioned that idea to Ward, and Ward had said, well, I have a used cello case. Do you want that instead? And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
So he gave it to me. It needed a couple repairs. I fixed it up. And I thought, perfect. It's a musical case for the summer show. Summer show is music. And then I added the birds because the birds make music.
Yeah.
And I actually had a used bird cage as well. I found that as well. So I was like, okay, I want these two things to play together.
Yeah.
And I put them both, you saw it. It was set up how with the bird cage up top and then the case at the bottom so that they were correlating. There was also a horn that was below it.
Yeah.
That I felt was perfect.
Yes.
It all comes together,
The horn on the shelf.
Yes.
Down below. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I just find these materials and I acquire so many things that I just keep and I'm like, oh, I'm going to use this eventually for something. And I did. So I had those things for a while, actually. Ward gave me that case over a year or two ago and I just kind of had it with me and I was like, eventually I'm going to do something with this. I just don't know what. And then after getting the bird cage and the horn, I was like, it all came together.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a beautiful ode to Bethlehem as well. Growing up here and having Music Fest and the music scene in Bethlehem so relevant and active in the culture of Bethlehem. It's that's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the singing birds. There's so many birds around here.
And I also try to make my arrangements when I'm showing at the gallery correlate to their surroundings in the space. So I actually don't make my a lot of the time I don't make my arrangements until I know what artwork is going to be in the show, what the walls look like, what furniture is around, where the space there even is for an arrangement, you know what I mean? So I take all that into account when I'm making my stuff. So when I knew that when Ward had given me the okay to do a larger piece for the summer show, I thought, well, Adam Capone was in that show, and he had these wooden birds that were flying around in the front room.
Yeah, I remember
and
those.
I was like, birds. And that was another
really
connection.
cool.
That's super cool.
I like finding connections with things. And that case specifically was in Abby Roscoe's room, and her work references a lot of film and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting correlation as well.
Totally.
So...
very neat.
Yeah, and the way those color palettes played off of each other, Abby's work and the colors used there
I was very excited with the turnout of that.
Amazing. Yeah.
Worked really well.
Yeah.
You definitely have an eye for catching your surroundings and being able to make it look and fit perfectly.
It's a lot of effort.
You're very talented in it.
Oh,
it is a lot of work to make all those connections.
Yeah.
Especially with most people won't even make those connections when they walk in and look at it. But you made it to begin with, and then every now and then someone will be like, oh, yeah, well, there were birds up front, and there are birds in here, and there's, so it's really neat to see how much, work and effort you put into all your pieces.
Thanks.
And that there's such a deep meaning behind everything that you do.
Yeah.
In every little piece.
Another example would be the glass show that we had in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys noticed or if anybody noticed, but I specifically made all of my arrangements in glass.
Mm-hmm. I did see that.
Yeah.
Because they're not
really
always in
neat.
glass. I mean,
Yeah,
a lot of
totally.
them, sometimes they are, but I chose interesting glass pieces to
Mhm.
make my arrangements in. And no, the glass pieces themselves weren't artist made or locally. I don't even know if they were locally made. I got them at thrift stores, a lot of them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
it correlated with the beautiful glass artwork
Mhm.
around. So the arrangements at the gallery are all for the show that's
Okay.
coming up.
Mhm.
I make them as kind of an embellishment to the show. They're all for sale. But the idea I came to with Ward, and I said, hey, we have a house. This is our house that we're with artwork,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a really weird way to put this.
No, that makes sense.
It's supposed to look like a home.
Yeah.
And people have flowers and plants in their home.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, I was like, can we show my arrangements?
Yeah.
And then I could be like a house artist and change it up every time
Mhm.
and, correlate to the art in the rooms. And he was like, yeah, that's great. So I started doing that. And, I obviously want it to work with the space. I don't want something so off
Sure.
the wall that it just looks
Sure.
out of place.
Yeah.
And that's what people do in their homes as well when they
Totally.
Yeah.
bring stuff in. So
Yeah.
I do commissions. A lot of the time I'll ask a client to send me images of their space. And I ask them, what are you looking for? What color palette? What are you thinking size-wise? all the basics. And yeah, so having that experience of doing it at the gallery definitely helped for the commissions.
Sure.
There was a couple I actually did their whole space last winter, their apartment, and I did 6 arrangements for them.
Wow, that's
And
awesome.
they had me over. I went through, looked at each space that they wanted me to do, and I took photos, all of that. So I correlated, their color schemes, what their ideas were, what I thought would look good.
Yeah.
That's how any
Totally.
designer probably works. But
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really neat.
I love the wreath that you did for Mandy Martin.
The wreaths are beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was-
I appreciate that.
I really enjoyed that piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She actually, she reached out to me because she saw a similar one on my Instagram. And she was like, I want one that's like this. And I was like, okay, I'll see what I can do.
Mhm.
And it is hard for the silk flowers because you have to rely solely on the materials you can find.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then sure with fresh flowers too, where you can acquire them.
Yeah, totally.
So it was after the holidays, and I had acquired most of my materials before the holidays, and I was out. So I was like, if I can find the stuff, I can do it,
Sure.
Yeah.
So I was able to, and I was, it was great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I know you submitted, I think it was 4 different pieces
Yeah, I
for us
did.
to look at. And
And they're all very different, which I
they are all
I
very
really like.
different.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to talk about one of them a little bit more in depth. This piece is Bloom Outward by Rachel Bell. This embellished collagraph print is 11 by 17 inches and is matted in white. The background of this piece has a mix of reddish brown, maroon, and hints of white. The white primarily comes from parts of exposed paper and is accented by a few instances of white paint. The texture in the background is a mix of flower petals and lace. On top of the background are muted pink, gold, and maroon flower petals. One petal by the right bottom corner flows off the print and onto the white mat.
Well, the paper itself, it wasn't originally made on. It's
Okay.
when I printed it, the paper itself got very dirty with ink. I wasn't a very clean printer back then. I just
Makes sense.
Yeah. So what I did was, after embellishing it and stuff, I did cut out the print from its original
Oh, very cool.
piece, and I glued it onto
A new
a new
piece.
piece.
That makes
Yeah, and
sense.
Color penciled
penciled it around it to make it,
That's super cool, though.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes.
I want the viewer to react to the work however they're going to react. If they, whatever emotion they're feeling, whatever idea they think of when they see it, I think is completely valid, even if it's not something I was intending.
Sure.
I've had a lot of people say things about my work that is completely either the opposite or just something so off the wall that I wasn't even thinking about. But that's the whole point. Everybody experienced something different, and I think that everybody's experiences are valid. So Even if it's not what I was thinking about when I was making the piece, it's what they're thinking about when they're looking at it. And that's cool as well.
Yeah.
I want everybody to connect to it in any way they can. As long as it's evoking some type of emotion or some type of feeling or anything, really, I'm happy. You know? I mean, if they're upset by it, then they can not look at it, I guess.
Sure.
Well, that's their choice. They can walk away if they want.
Yeah.
But if they connect with it enough to, want to take it home, I think that's a win,
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. The worst thing that someone can do is see something and feel nothing.
Exactly.
I'd rather they love it
or
and
hate
it make them feel something or remember it from how much they dislike it.
Yeah.
Yeah. To feel nothing, to look at something, that's really when it hurts.
Yeah.
Definitely.
No. Well, with that, Rachel, where can people find your work?
So right now, I do have artwork in the hallway at the Banana Factory on the second floor, and also in my studio as well. Of course, I have to be there when you want to view that, so you can either contact me, make an appointment, I can invite you in, or you can come to a First Friday. They're the first Friday of every month. And upcoming, I'm going to be at the Twisted Olive. My artwork's going to be up for 2 months, starting January 24th to March 21st, I believe. And my Meet the Artist night, where you can come and talk to me and view my artwork with me there. And then I will be in an upcoming show at the Bethlehem House Gallery this year. Not sure when. We're still figuring that out. And also the Banana Factory hosts their annual Resident Artist exhibition, which will run July to October, I believe. I don't have the dates up right now. I'm sorry.
No worries.
But yeah, so that will be in the Crayola Gallery at the Banana Factory in the summertime.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And if people are interested in purchasing your work at all, how can they reach out to you on social media?
They can contact me Instagram. My Instagram handle is at Rachel Bell. Rachel spelled with 2 L's, Bell spelled with 1. You can email me, rachel@bethlehemhousegallery.com. They can come into the gallery and talk to me. They can come to my studio. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to find me.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight, and we can't wait to share your story with everyone around.
Yay.
Thanks for coming in today, Rachel. Our opportunity for the week is the Black Vision Artist Reception. Please join Art House and their guest curator, Femi J. Johnson, for the artist reception for celebration of Black History Month. The reception and opening of Black Vision will take place at Art House, which is located at 645 Hamilton Street, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. on Thursday, February 3rd, 2022. Femi has chosen 3 prominent local African-American artists to feature in the show. Al Johnson, whose paintings are described as soul-based works, Charles Stonewall, whose photographs are visual poetry, and Beresford Booth, whose work is described as ritual manifestations.
Thanks for tuning in to the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast, a Steel Pixel original series. Don't forget to like the podcast, leave us a review, and follow us on both social media and streaming services at Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast.